In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, Christ is in our midst. Today, as we come to the last day before our great and holy Lent, I wanted to share with you a little bit about what our schedule is today for our church, in the fact of after the liturgy today. We are going to go to the Serbian monastery and also to the Serbian seminary to see the incorrupt relics of St. Martharios and also to venerate the relics of St. Nikolai Velimirovich. The relics in our church, as you see, we've worked so hard to bring relics here to our church, and as we know, the relics of the martyrs are one of the things, if you want to call it that, but one of the items that you need in the consecration of a church. You need 3 relics of martyrs placed inside the altar table in order to consecrate a church, in order to make the church baptized, if you will, in the eyes of the church. And when this church was consecrated, when it was officially dedicated in the church's eyes to being a sanctuary and to being a church of God, in the official form, the relics of those 3 martyrs were placed inside the altar table. But I think one of the things we have to rewind a little bit and understand, as I was saying a while ago, when we had our festival in the fall, we had several people who were Orthodox come and visit for a church tour, but they were of other ethnic backgrounds. There was a Russian, there was a Serbian, there was someone from Jordan, a Jordanian Orthodox, and they all came in one after the other, and they all asked the same question, which was, can I come to your church because I'm not Greek? And one of the things that I think is a disadvantage for us as Orthodox is the lack of understanding that we have of the other ethnic Orthodox in the United States and even in our area. Now, many of you may or may not know that even though we are St. Athanasios Greek Orthodox Church, that St. Athanasios himself was not Greek. He was from Egypt. He was from Alexandria, Egypt. And many of you might be named Constantine or Helen or Constantina. And St. Constantine himself was not Greek. In fact, he was born in Serbia. So we see that the saints in our church are from other ethnic backgrounds, but they are common saints. St. Athanasios is a common saint among all of the Orthodox throughout the world. Same thing with St. Constantine and Helen and many, many other saints. So one of the questions that was coming to me over and over was, can I come to this church because I'm not Greek? Was really a sad question to hear, but more so indicative of our lack of understanding of other ethnic Orthodox. So when we talk about the Serbian saints today that we will go and venerate, the question might be, are they legitimate? Are they legitimate saints? Is this really a church that we can go to, that we could receive communion within that church, or even the Russian Orthodox Church or Albanian Church? I mean, what is it? And the answer to that question is many of the Orthodox churches that are ethnic Orthodox, like the Serbian Orthodox Church, we can receive the sacraments, and we are in full communion with these other ethnic Orthodox churches. So as we talk a little bit about going to see these 2 Serbian saints today, it's important, and the reason I'm speaking about this today in my sermon and not afterwards is because I encourage you to go see something that is unique and something that is very rare in the world of Christianity. And it just happens to be about 45 minutes away. And that is when a saint is incorrupt, when the body of a saint remains together and incorrupt and remains as such throughout the centuries. Now we have the shoes of St. Dionysios and St. Gerasimos and part of the shoe of St. Spiridon. All 3 of those walking saints, as they're called, are incorrupt. Their bodies have remained through the centuries intact. They're darkened by time. Their skin is darkened by time. But their bodies are together, and they have not dissolved into the elements from which it was made, as we say in the funeral service. But many of us have not been to Greece to see these incorrupt saints. Some of you may have not been to San Francisco to see a Russian Orthodox saint, Saint John of San Francisco, who is another incorrupt saint. He's on the wall in the black and the icon on the side. But we have now this great blessing in our area, in Illinois, the middle of the Midwest. We have this incorrupt saint of Saint Marthadios, whose relics were discovered here, and he happened to be he was the first bishop that was consecrated a bishop and came to America, the first Serbian Orthodox bishop. And his life, he died very young because of the fact that he suffered from tuberculosis. He was born in 1889 and he died in 1935. So he was a very young man. And one of the interesting things that we see with his body is inside the reliquary case. It was very similar to that, only much larger. You can see his beard, his brown beard, come from underneath the cloth that is called the air, which the priest puts around his neck as we go around for the entrance. That air is placed over the face of a clergyman at their funeral. In fact, if you were here for the funeral of Father Cavadillas, when he had passed away, at the very end, the air is placed over his face, and we had one here that we used for his funeral to symbolize that they are on the other side of the veil, and the other side of life here, and are now in the eternal liturgy in the kingdom of heaven. So his face is covered, but as the air ends, you can see part of his beard, and you can see his hands, and his body is incorrupt up to the point to right around his knees. And then from his knees down, it has dissolved, if you want to call it that. It is decomposed, and those bones are not incorrupt like the rest of his body. Now you might be saying, well, why at his knees? Why is it that? St. John of San Francisco was completely incorrupt except for his big toe. His big toe was dissolved. It had disintegrated, or decomposed, I should say. And the reason for that is that everyone has no one is completely perfect. Even the saints aren't completely perfect. But their bodies are shown to be, for the most part, incorrupt, for those saints that are incorrupt, as a reminder to us of the grace of God. Now, they come to us as a gift. Now, I say this to you on this day before we begin Great Lent, to encourage you to come with me today to the Serbian monastery, because I know it's intimidating to say, go see the saint on your own. Go to the Serbian monastery, go by there yourself and go venerate. And people are like, oh, I don't know Serbian, I don't know where it's at, I feel uncomfortable going. That's why I am your official tour guide today to take you there. And the arrangements have been made, the communications have been made with the monastery there for me to them to let them know that we are coming. But I encourage you, because it is a gift to the world to have these saints, to have not only the relics that we have in our church and the other relics that are almost here with us and should be with us probably in another few weeks, to say the longest span of time. So another few weeks we'll have the rest of our relics here. But we have this incorrupt saint, and also a saint who writes and throughout his life every day about the writings of the church, about the saints of the church, and that is St. Nikolai, the other saint, who was here in America, as was St. Marthadios. They were here, and they were stationed where? In Libertyville. And the St. Nikolai taught in the seminary in Libertyville, which we are going to go to too, as well, I should say. And that church there, when we go inside that church and you look inside that church, it's a dream of mine. Every square inch of everything. There's no such thing as white paint in that church. It's all iconography. And it's beautiful iconography, that some of the more rare icons that you would see even that which is an icon of St. Nikolai himself in a scene where he was imprisoned in the Dachau prison camp during the war in Russia. And he was tortured, he was imprisoned, he was beaten, and he comes out of that imprisonment to continually write without anger, without a traumatic response. He writes with his love of God, and it continued to make him grow. And that's also a reminder for us, too, to see this icon on the wall of the church. It's kind of in the barrel of the church, and it's up on the right, or as your left, I should say. And you see the icon of him there, and you read his writings, and you would never know that he was imprisoned and tortured. You would never get that from his writings because his writings are so beautiful. In fact, he's called the Serbian St. John Chrysostom, the one who writes with such beauty. And he was buried outside of the monastery, and you can see his tomb there. And after a while, his body was taken, and most of his relics now are in Serbia, but they also have some of his relics within the church. And then St. Mardarios, who's the incorrupt saint who is now placed inside the church at the monastery. He was here, and he was actually working for St. Nikolai before he became a bishop. And one of the interesting pictures that you can see, or an icon that you can see of him, is him riding a bike with bricks on the bike. Now you might say, well, okay, what kind of torture is that? But he rode his bike to go and buy bricks so that they could build the monastery, because he was the one that built the monastery. So he would drive his bike back and forth, load it with bricks, and ride back and forth. And you think of our lives, our biggest problem is, my window's fogged up on a Sunday morning and I have to scrape the ice off, or my car's not clean, and when I get out, I get the salt on my leg of my nice clothing. And you think of this saint who was just simply riding his bike throughout Libertyville, picking up bricks and bringing them back, and building this monastery, which is a gorgeous facility. It has a cemetery attached to it, the monastery, and then this chapel where St. Mardarios is now enshrined with his relics inside. So I say this to you today because today is the Sunday of forgiveness. It's the day where we have to let go of the things that bother us, to not have the internal road rage that we have with humanity, and to let it go so that we can continue to come forward throughout the Lenten period without the burdens of the traumas of the abuses that have come against us and the ones that will continue to come against us. We have to let those go. And that might seem hard to do, and in many instances it is. It's a hard thing to just let things go. When somebody says, let it go, you're like, I don't want to let it go. I want the last word. And as ethnic people, many times we have to have the last word, right? We have to say the last thing. In fact, out the way out the door, and you bark. And that's what we do, is traumatize people. When someone says something bad to you and they're on the phone and then they hang up, if you've ever had one of those calls, and then what do? You call someone that you're not mad at and you finish the conversation with them. You tell them exactly what you were going to say if that conversation went on, and you vent and you say it over and over, and you talk to that person that you have no issue with like you were talking to the person that just hung up on you. So that is one of the secular ways that we try to alleviate the traumas against us. But the church tells us that we have to prayerfully present ourselves to God and realize that we are broken. And when we realize that we're broken, we can't look at somebody else and say, they're broken more than I am. We have to look at ourselves and say that we are the ones that are struggling. We are the ones that have problems and issues, and we don't have enough time or enough energy or enough grace to be able to engage the negative things around us. We have to just move forward closer to God and let those things go. Because if God were to come at you with his arms wide open and walk towards you to give you an embrace, what could you possibly carry in your hands? Nothing. Would you want to carry your suitcases of grievances and your bags of sin with you? You would let it go, and you would say, Christ is coming to me to embrace me. I have to have my hands free. And many times freeing our hands means we have to free our hearts up. And in freeing our hearts up, it means we have to let go of that baggage. So that's why today, on the Sunday of Forgiveness, I invite all of you to come after the service to have a little something to eat, and then we're going to leave from here to go and to ask for divine intercession, to ask a saint who resides here in our state, less than an hour away, with another saint who resides in our state, together, and to ask them for help in your Lenten journey. If you haven't fasted, if you've had problems fasting, if you've had problems with faith, if you've had problems with loss, if you've had problems with trauma in your life, go and present that to him and speak to the saints and to see the grace of God that has come to this area and is present within our midst, and to see for the first time, to take your children to see an incorrupt saint and to venerate the relics there. There's oil that you will be anointed with. I will anoint everyone who comes with the oil that's from his tomb. And to realize, too, that the last time I had gone there, one of the caretakers at the monastery was telling me of all the different miracles that are happening in front of the relics. All these people who are being healed and all these graces of God coming through the blessed saints that are there. So if you are able to come today, I invite you to come with me. You don't have to know Serbian. You don't have to do anything special. You just have to come, and I will show you and guide you and introduce to you the blessed saints of our area, who many of us may have not known before, but cannot really afford to go more days without knowing and without asking for their help. Amen.